I still remember the exact moment at my brother Michael's wedding when his new mother-in-law, Eleanor, leaned over to her friend and whispered, "That's the poor sister, the one who never quite figured things out." She didn't realize I could hear her through the elaborate floral centerpiece between us, or that beneath the table. I was clutching an envelope containing the deed to my new company's headquarters in downtown Boston, a purchase that had made me a millionaire, at least on paper. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The evening had been a parade of subtle jabs and pitying glances. Michael's new wife, Jessica, introducing me as the creative one in the family with that particular tone that suggested unemployable. My parents fielding questions about my unconventional career choices with strained smiles. Even my cousin Olivia had made a show of picking up the tab for my champagne, murmuring, "my treat," just loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. None of them knew about the signing meeting I'd left early to attend this rehearsal dinner, or the investors who had just valued my tech company at 8 figures. They certainly didn't know about the custom Rolls-Royce Phantom I'd arranged to have delivered to the hotel the following day, a celebratory gift to myself that would now serve a dual purpose. When the wedding coordinator announced it was time for family photos on the grand staircase, Jessica's mother gathered her designer-clad relatives with another stage-whispered comment. "Let's get the affluent side of the family together first." My father looked away in embarrassment while my mother straightened my off-the-rack dress collar, a gesture that took me straight back to childhood adjustments before school pictures. I smiled politely and waited for my moment. After all, I'd been waiting for years. 4 years earlier, my life looked nothing like I'd planned. I had just turned 28, and instead of the successful career and stable relationship I'd envisioned, I was moving back to my parents' house in Newton, Massachusetts, with 2 suitcases and a cloud of failure hanging over me. My 7-year relationship with James had imploded spectacularly when he announced he was taking the promotion to London we'd discussed as our opportunity. Only he was going alone because, as he put it, I need someone who matches my ambition, not someone still trying to find herself. The startup where I'd been working 80-hour weeks had folded abruptly, leaving me with nothing but an impressive title on my resume and a final paycheck that barely covered my share of the rent on the apartment I now had to vacate. My savings had been depleted by investing in the company, a decision James had called financially irresponsible during our final argument. "Emma, honey, we've set up the guest room for you," my mother said as she helped me carry my belongings up the familiar staircase of my childhood home. Her voice held a careful neutrality that couldn't quite mask her disappointment. My older brother Michael had already established himself as a successful surgeon by my age. My younger sister Abby was finishing law school at Harvard, and here I was, the middle child, moving back home with nothing to show for my years of independence. "It's temporary, Mom," I assured her, trying to convince myself as much as her. "I've already got some interviews lined up." "Of course, sweetie. We're happy to have you home for as long as you need." The unspoken, but hopefully not too long, hung in the air between us. That night, lying in my old bedroom surrounded by high school trophies and college textbooks I couldn't bear to discard, I scrolled through social media, a masochistic exercise in comparison. Michael had posted photos from a medical conference in Vienna. Abby was sharing highlights from her summer internship at a prestigious law firm. My cousin Olivia, always quick to showcase her corporate success, had just updated her profile with pictures of her new lakeside vacation home. I closed the app and stared at the ceiling. The glow-in-the-dark stars I'd placed there at 16 now faded to barely visible specks. "This isn't how my story ends," I whispered to myself, a declaration that felt both desperate and determined in the quiet room. The next morning, I woke before dawn, a habit formed during my startup days. The house was silent as I made my way to the kitchen to brew coffee. My father's Wall Street Journal lay on the counter, and I flipped through it idly while waiting. for the coffee maker to finish its cycle. A small article caught my eye, a profile of a woman who had transformed her tech failure into a multi-million-dollar success by pivoting to solve a problem she'd identified during her previous ventures. Collapse. Something clicked as I read her story. The startup where I'd worked had been developing project management software for creative teams, but we'd struggled with integrating the various tools that creatives used. In my role as product manager, I'd spent countless hours talking to frustrated designers, writers, and marketers about the disconnected nature of their workflows. What if that wasn't just a feature problem, but an opportunity for an entirely different approach? By the time my parents came downstairs, I was surrounded by notebook pages filled with ideas, sketches, and market notes. My mother's concerned expression as she surveyed the scene made me realize how manic I must have appeared. "Emma, did you sleep at all?" she asked, exchanging a worried glance with my father. "I had an idea," I said simply, not wanting to elaborate and hear their well-intentioned but confidence-deflating concerns. "That's nice, dear," my mother replied in the same tone she'd used when I was 7 and announced my plan to build a roller coaster in the backyard. "But don't forget you have that interview at your Uncle Robert's firm tomorrow. He's really going out on a limb recommending you." The interview, a mercy opportunity at my uncle's accounting firm for an administrative position, loomed like a prison sentence. It represented safety, stability, and surrender all at once. "I'll be ready for it," I promised, already knowing I would attend only to maintain family peace. My mind was elsewhere, racing with possibilities that had nothing to do with filing documents and answering phones for my uncle's partners. Later that day, I called Rachel Chen, my former colleague from the startup, and the only person who might understand what I was envisioning. We met at a coffee shop downtown, far enough from Newton that I wouldn't run into family friends eager to report back on my activities. "You look terrible," Rachel observed as she slid into the booth across from me, her brutal honesty one of the qualities I'd always appreciated about her. "Thanks. I feel worse," I admitted. "But I think I might have something." Over the next 3 hours, fueled by too many espressos, I outlined my idea for a platform that would serve as a universal translator between creative tools, allowing designers, writers, and marketers to stay in their preferred applications while collaborating seamlessly. Rachel, who had landed on her feet after our startup's collapse with a developer position at a larger tech company, listened critically, poking holes in my concept where needed. "This could work," she finally said, tapping her finger thoughtfully against her coffee cup. "But you'd need serious technical expertise and funding, neither of which you currently have." "I have you," I countered. "You're the best developer I know, and as for funding..." I hesitated, knowing what I was about to suggest was risky. "I still have my grandmother's inheritance." Rachel's eyes widened. "The money you were saving for a house someday? Emma, that's your safety net." "What's the point of a safety net if you never take the leap?" I replied, surprising myself with the conviction in my voice. "Besides, it's not enough for a house in Boston anyway, but it might be enough to build a prototype and attract real investment." The inheritance, $50,000 my grandmother had left me with instructions to build something that lasts, had been sitting untouched in a high-yield savings account for years. James had always insisted we save it for a home down payment, one of many decisions I'd deferred to him during our relationship. "I'm in," Rachel said after a moment's consideration, "but on one condition. We do this right. No 80-hour weeks burning ourselves out for someone else's vision. If we're risking everything, it's on our terms." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. We spent the remainder of the afternoon outlining a business plan, with Rachel agreeing to work evenings and weekends while maintaining her day job for stability. I would use my product management experience to define the platform and begin approaching potential customers for feedback. while tapping my inheritance to fund initial development and legal costs. When I returned home that evening, my parents were hosting their monthly dinner with my brother Michael and his then-girlfriend Jessica. The contrast between their established lives and my uncertain future had never felt more pronounced as I slipped into the dining room apologizing for my lateness. "There she is," my father said with forced cheerfulness. "We were just telling Michael and Jessica about your interview tomorrow." "At Uncle Robert's firm," Michael nodded approvingly. "Smart move, Em. You need something stable after that startup fiasco." Jessica, perfectly polished in a way I'd never managed to achieve, offered what she clearly thought was an encouraging smile. Administrative roles can be really fulfilling. My assistant says she loves the predictability of her job. I took a large sip of wine before responding. "Actually, I'm exploring some other opportunities too." The table fell silent, my mother's expression shifting to one of controlled panic. "But your uncle already told the partners you'd be coming." "In?" "It would be embarrassing for him if you didn't show up." "I'll go to the interview," I assured her. "I'm just saying I have other plans as well." "Not another startup," Michael groaned. "Emma, you need to be practical. You're not getting any younger, and your resume already has one failure on it." "Michael," my mother admonished half-heartedly, though I could tell she agreed with him. "What?" "I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. Emma's always been the dreamer in the family. Maybe it's time to grow up and accept that not everyone gets to be exceptional. There's nothing wrong with a normal job and a normal life." The words stung precisely because they echoed my own doubts. The voice in my head that questioned whether I was being foolish, whether my ambitions exceeded my abilities. Jessica nodded along with Michael's assessment, her expression a mixture of pity and superiority that made my cheeks burn. "I should check on those emails I mentioned," I said, rising from the table before I could say something I'd regret. No one protested as I retreated to my room, the conversation shifting easily to Michael's recent promotion. That night, lying awake in my childhood bed, I made a promise to myself. I would prove them wrong, not just James, who thought I lacked ambition, or Michael, who saw me as an impractical dreamer, but everyone who had ever underestimated me, including sometimes myself. The path forward wouldn't be easy or straightforward, but for the first time in months, I had direction. True to my word, I attended the interview at my uncle's firm the following day. I wore the conservative navy suit my mother had helped me select, answered questions politely about my 5-year plan, carefully omitting my actual intentions, and thanked the partners for their time. By the afternoon, as expected, they offered me the position with its modest salary and benefits package. I asked for 24 hours to consider, a request that visibly confused them given my circumstances. "Of course," the senior partner said, exchanging glances with my uncle. "Though I should mention this opportunity won't remain open indefinitely." I spent that evening in my parents' garage, clearing space among stored holiday decorations and outgrown sporting equipment to create a makeshift office. If I was going to live at home while launching this venture, I needed some physical and psychological separation from the family dynamics that threatened to undermine my confidence. My father found me there around midnight, arranging a second-hand desk I'd purchased from a nearby college student moving out of his dorm. "Your mother's worried," he said, leaning against the doorframe. "She thinks you're having some sort of crisis." I tightened the last desk screw before responding. "I'm not having a crisis, Dad. I'm having clarity." He studied me for a long moment, his expression unreadable in the dim garage lighting. My father had always been the harder parent to gauge, less openly expressive with either criticism or praise than my mother. "You're going to turn down the job at Robert's firm, aren't you?" he finally asked. "Yes." He nodded slowly. "Your brother thinks you're being reckless." "Michael has always taken the most direct path available," I replied. "I respect that, but it's not me." "No, it's not." He was quiet for a moment, then added, "Your grandmother was the same way, you know. Everyone thought she was crazy when she used her savings to open that bakery after your grandfather died. Said a widow her age should focus on security, not risk. This was news to me. I'd known my grandmother's bakery had been successful, eventually, expanding to 3 locations before she sold the business in her 70s, but I'd never heard the story of its beginnings. She proved them wrong, I said. She did. My father straightened up, reaching into his pocket. Which is why I think you might need this more than the garage space. He handed me a key. It's to my office downtown. I barely use it since I started working from home. It has decent internet, and nobody will bother you there. The gesture, practical support without intrusive questions, was so characteristic of my father that I felt a surge of gratitude. Thanks, Dad. Don't thank me yet. Your mother is still going to expect you at family dinner every Sunday to make sure you're eating properly. And Emma? He added as he turned to leave. Whatever you're building, make it good. The following morning, I declined the position at my uncle's firm as graciously as possible, weathered my mother's distress and Michael's judgmental comments about responsibility, and moved my operation to my father's small but functional office in a slightly outdated building near South Station. Rachel and I established a routine, meeting each evening after her regular job to work on our prototype. We called the company Mosaic for its ability to bring together disparate creative elements into a cohesive whole. The name felt significant, to me personally as well, a way of integrating the fractured pieces of my professional identity into something new and purposeful. The first months were grueling. My inheritance money disappeared faster than anticipated into software licenses, legal fees, and the expensive process of building secure integration protocols. Rachel and I fought frequently about technical priorities, each of us bearing the stress of our precarious situation differently. I took on freelance product management consulting to stretch our runway, often working through the night to keep both commitments. Family events became exercises in deflection. My parents had apparently agreed between themselves to give me space to get this out of my system, but my brother was less patient. At his engagement dinner to Jessica 6 months after I'd begun, Mosaic, he cornered me near the restaurant's coat check. "How long are you going to keep this up, Em?" he asked, his concern wrapped in judgment as usual. "Mom says you're barely sleeping. You look exhausted, and for what? So you can fail publicly again?" "I'm building something, Michael. It takes time." "Time you don't have," he countered. "You're almost 30. Jessica's friend Charlotte is a recruiter at Massachusetts General. She could help you find something in hospital administration, stable, good benefits." "I don't want stable," I said, my patience thinning. "I want extraordinary." He sighed in the particular way that had infuriated me since childhood, the sound of someone much older and wiser dealing with an unreasonable child. Not everyone gets extraordinary, Emma. Some of us just need to accept our limitations and make the best of what's realistic. "Is that what you did?" I asked, unable to resist the jab. "Settled for realistic?" His expression hardened. "I worked my ass off for everything I have. I didn't chase fantasies. I built something real." "So am I insisted. But he was already walking away, rejoining Jessica and her parents at their table. From across the restaurant, I could see him shaking his head slightly as Jessica raised an eyebrow in my direction. That conversation fueled 3 straight days of focused work, my brother's dismissal becoming perverse motivation. Rachel noticed the shift in my intensity when she arrived at the office after her day job. "What happened?" she asked, setting down her laptop bag. "You've got that look." "What look?" "The one you had right before you rewrote the entire user experience documentation in a single weekend at our last startup. The slightly scary, definitely obsessive one." I told her about Michael's comments, expecting sympathy, but Rachel just nodded thoughtfully. "He might be right, you know," she said, raising her hand to stop my protest. "Not about giving up, but about adjusting our approach." We've been trying to build the perfect product in isolation, but what we need now is market validation and revenue. Something real to show your brother and everyone else. She was right. We'd been so focused on building comprehensive solutions that we'd created nothing usable yet. That night, we pivoted our strategy, identifying the single most valuable integration our creative users needed and focusing exclusively on delivering it as a standalone product we could actually launch. 2 weeks later, we had a minimally viable product ready for testing. It wasn't the complete vision, but it solved one significant problem for creative teams: seamlessly connecting design files with content management systems. We priced it modestly as a monthly subscription and launched without fanfare, targeting small design agencies for our initial user base. To our surprise, the response was immediate. Our targeted solution addressed such a specific pain point that word spread quickly among creative professionals. Within a month, we had our first 100 paying customers. By the 3-month mark, we'd reached 1,000, with a waiting list for additional features. The morning our subscriber count passed 1,500, I received a text from my father, the first acknowledgement from any family member that something significant might be happening with Mosaic. Saw your company mentioned in Tech Boston newsletter. Proud of you. That simple message meant more than he could know. I printed it out and taped it to my computer monitor, a reminder during difficult moments that someone in my family believed in my path. Our early success attracted attention, beyond just users. David Morrison, a veteran software entrepreneur who had sold his previous company to Adobe, reached out after using our product with his design team. He requested a meeting to discuss potential collaboration, though I suspected acquisition was his real interest. Rachel and I debated how to approach the meeting. She favored exploring acquisition possibilities, a quick win that would validate our concept and provide financial security. I wanted to maintain independence, convinced that what we were building could be much larger with the right support. We could walk away with a few million each, Rachel argued the night before the meeting. That's life-changing money, Emma. No more sharing a cramped office, no more ramen dinners, no more proving yourself to your family. Her words gave me pause. $1 million payout would certainly silence the doubters in my life. I could buy a beautiful condo, perhaps even in the same upscale building where Michael and Jessica had recently purchased. I could attend family gatherings as a certified success rather than the perpetual disappointment. Let's just hear him out, I conceded, but I'm not committing to anything tomorrow. David Morrison was not what I expected. Rather than the aggressive acquirer looking to absorb a competitor, he appeared genuinely excited about our vision. Over coffee in his corner office with views of Boston Harbor, he asked thoughtful questions about our technology and our long-term plans. You've solved an interesting problem, he said after I'd walked him through our roadmap, but I think you're actually sitting on a much bigger opportunity than you realize. What do you mean? Rachel asked, glancing at me. Right now, you're focused on creative workflows, which is smart. Defined market, clear problem. But the architecture you've built for these integrations could extend far beyond creative teams. Every enterprise faces similar challenges connecting their specialized tools. He was articulating something I'd been considering but hadn't fully developed: the potential for our integration platform to scale across industries, not just creative fields. I'm not interested in acquiring Mosaic, David continued, surprising us both. I'm interested in investing in it and helping you build something substantial. I've been looking for my next project, and I think this could be it. By the end of that meeting, we had the framework of a deal. David would invest $2 million for a 20% stake in Mosaic, joining as a strategic advisor rather than taking operational control. His experience and connections would help us scale, while Rachel and I maintained leadership of the company we'd created. One condition, David added as we prepared to leave. We need proper offices. No offense, but your current setup isn't going to impress enterprise clients or the additional team members you'll need to hire. I thought of my father's small, dated office that had served as Mosaic's headquarters. What did you have in mind? I have a real estate contact with a beautiful space opening up in the Seaport District. Former tech company, fully furnished, room to grow. Let me make an introduction. Walking out of that meeting, I felt simultaneously elated and terrified. With David's investment, Mosaic would transform from a scrappy startup into a real company with real expectations. Rachel and I celebrated with happy hour drinks at a waterfront bar, allowing ourselves a moment of triumph before the hard work ahead. "We should tell people," Rachel said, sipping her champagne. "My parents? Your family? They should know what we've accomplished." I hesitated, remembering Michael's dismissive attitude, Jessica's condescension, my mother's well-intentioned but undermining concern. Not yet, I decided. Let's wait until the deal is finalized and we're in the new space. I want to show them, not tell them. The following weeks passed in a blur of legal documents, financial due diligence, and planning for our expansion. David's investment closed without complications, the funds transforming our balance sheet overnight. We toured the Seaport office space, a stunning open concept with floor-to-ceiling windows and views of the harbor, and signed a 3-year lease that made my stomach clench despite our newly secure financial position. Rachel took charge of hiring our initial engineering team, while I focused on upgrading our infrastructure and preparing our enterprise strategy. We were so immersed in building Mosaic's next phase that I barely registered the approaching date of Michael and Jessica's wedding until my mother called, concerned about my RSVP status. "Of course I'm coming," I assured her, glancing at the calendar with alarm. The wedding was just 3 weeks away, directly coinciding with our planned office opening. I just forgot to mail the card. "And you'll need to attend the rehearsal dinner the night before," she reminded me. "Jessica's parents are hosting at the Grand Harbor Hotel. Very elegant. You might want to shop for something appropriate." The hint about my wardrobe was typical. My mother had always gently suggested that my professional attire lacked the polished quality she associated with success. In the past, such comments had stung, but now they barely registered. I was too focused on Mosaic's momentum to worry about my fashion choices. "I'll find something suitable," I promised, making a mental note to schedule shopping between vendor meetings. 2 weeks before the wedding, Mosaic faced its first major crisis. A critical server upgrade went wrong, taking our service offline for nearly 6 hours. Rachel and our new engineering team worked frantically to restore functionality, while I handled increasingly anxious customer communications. By the time we resolved the issue, I had personally called our 20 largest clients and sent detailed explanations to hundreds more. The experience, though stressful, solidified something important. Under pressure, our expanded team had performed exceptionally, with everyone focusing on solutions rather than blame. More significantly, our customers had been remarkably understanding, a testament to the relationship we'd built with them and the value our product provided. "We survived our first disaster," Rachel observed as we finally left the office around midnight. "And we didn't lose a single customer." "We gained 3, actually," I told her, checking my phone. Apparently, our transparency during the crisis impressed some prospects who were on the fence. As we waited for our Uber, exhausted but relieved, Rachel asked about wedding preparations. "Are you ready for the family inquisition about your career?" I realized I hadn't given it much thought. My family still believed I was working on some vague tech project, likely headed for another disappointment. I hadn't shared Mosaic's success, David's investment, or our expansion. Even my father, who had noticed the Tech Boston mention, didn't know the full extent of what we'd accomplished. "I'm not planning to make it a focus of conversation," I decided. "It's Michael's wedding. Let him have the spotlight." Rachel studied me with concern. "Emma, you've built something incredible here. You don't need to hide it." I'm not hiding it, I insisted. I'm just waiting for the right moment. After we open the new office, I'll give my family the full tour. Show them what we've built rather than trying to explain it. But as the wedding approached, I found myself increasingly troubled by my reluctance to share Mosaic's success with my family. Was I waiting for the perfect moment to reveal my accomplishments? Or was I holding back out of some deeper insecurity? Did I still need my family's validation despite everything I'd achieved without it? The night before the rehearsal dinner, I stayed late at our new Seaport office, supervising the installation of our company signage. The space was nearly ready, with sleek workstations for our growing team, glass-walled conference rooms, and a breathtaking view of Boston Harbor. Watching the installers position the backlit mosaic logo on our reception wall, I felt a surge of pride unlike anything I'd experienced before. This was real. This was substantial. This was mine. On impulse, I called the luxury car service we'd used for client meetings. I'd like to arrange something special, I began, an idea forming that surprised even me with its boldness. By the time I hung up, I had reserved a chauffeur-driven Rolls-Royce Phantom for the day of Michael's wedding, a dramatic statement that felt simultaneously petty and necessary. The rehearsal dinner the following evening was held in the Grand Harbor Hotel's waterfront ballroom, with floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing Boston's sparkling skyline. I arrived slightly late, having come directly from a final meeting with our new marketing team. My simple black cocktail dress, though elegant, lacked the designer labels that adorned the other female guests, a fact not lost on Jessica's mother Eleanor as she air-kissed my cheeks in greeting. "Emma, darling, how lovely you could make it. We weren't sure with your situation." Her emphasis on the last word managed to convey both pity and disapproval. "I wouldn't miss it," I replied with a smile, accepting a glass of champagne from a passing server. "And how is your job hunt progressing?" she continued, her voice carrying just enough to attract the attention of nearby guests. "Jessica mentioned you were between opportunities." Before I could respond, my cousin Olivia joined us, resplendent, in a red designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent had in my previous apartment. "Emma, I heard you moved back home. How are your parents handling the full nest again?" The questions continued through dinner, each seemingly innocent but designed to highlight what everyone perceived as my professional and personal failures. My brother, caught up in wedding preparations and his own moment of glory, made only a token effort to redirect conversation away from my circumstances. "Emma's working on a tech project," he offered, during a particularly pointed inquiry from Jessica's father about my career hiatus. "Oh, how interesting," Jessica's father replied, with the practiced politeness of someone humoring a child's imagination. "And what does this tech project involve exactly?" "It's a platform that integrates creative workflows," I explained, keeping my description deliberately vague. "We help teams collaborate more effectively." "Sounds creative," Eleanor commented, with a meaningful glance at her husband. "It's so important to follow your passions, even when they're not particularly lucrative." The comment stung more than it should have. I had achieved more in the past year than anyone at this table realized, yet I was sitting here accepting their condescension without correction. Why was I still performing the role of struggling Emma when that person no longer existed? As dinner concluded and Michael rose to make a toast to his bride-to-be, I made a decision. I wouldn't announce Mosaic's success tonight. This was still Michael's celebration. But I would no longer actively play into their misconceptions. Tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow, the chauffeur-driven Rolls-Royce would make the statement. I had been hesitant to voice myself. When Jessica's mother gathered the affluent side of the family for photos, excluding us with her careful phrasing, I felt my resolve strengthen. Let them enjoy their moment of superiority. By this time tomorrow, the dynamic would shift dramatically. The wedding day dawned bright and clear, A perfect June Saturday that had the hotel staff bustling with preparations for the garden ceremony. I spent the morning with my mother and Jessica's bridesmaids in a suite reserved for pre-wedding preparations, listening to excited chatter about honeymoon plans and future family gatherings. "Emma, you should meet Jessica's cousin Steven," my mother suggested as a makeup artist applied her foundation. "He's just accepted a position at a very good accounting firm. Very stable." "I'm sure he's lovely, Mom, but I'm not really looking right now," I replied, checking my phone discreetly. Rachel had texted that a major tech publication wanted to feature Mosaic in an upcoming issue about innovative startups, news that excited me far more than the prospect of meeting another stable potential match. "You can't focus on work forever, dear," my mother persisted. "There's more to life than career." The irony of this statement coming on the day we were celebrating my brother's career-focused life choices wasn't lost on me, but I kept my observation to myself. Today wasn't about my frustrations with family dynamics. Today was about supporting Michael and, yes, revealing my success on my own terms. As the ceremony time approached, guests began gathering in the hotel's manicured garden. I took my place as designated family member, greeting relatives and directing them to the seating area. Each conversation followed a familiar pattern. Initial pleasure at seeing me, followed by careful inquiries about my situation that barely masked their curiosity about my apparent downward trajectory. "Emma, you look well despite everything," my Aunt Margaret commented, patting my arm. "Your mother tells me you're exploring new directions. So brave of you to start over at your age." I smiled and thanked her for coming, no longer bothered by these assessments. In a few hours, the narrative would change completely. The ceremony itself was beautiful, with Michael and Jessica exchanging vows beneath a floral arch as the afternoon sun cast a golden glow over the proceedings. I felt genuine happiness for my brother despite our complicated relationship. Whatever our differences, I wanted him to find fulfillment in his chosen path. At the reception, I was seated at a table with distant relatives and Jessica's unmarried friends, the miscellaneous table far from the bridal party. The placement didn't surprise me, but I noticed my father's slight frown as he observed the arrangement during his walk to the head table. Conversation flowed around me, largely focused on the impressive careers and accomplishments of those seated at more prominent tables. Jessica's father gave a speech highlighting the bright future ahead for two young people who had made all the right choices, a pointed commentary that earned knowing glances in my direction. As the meal concluded and dancing began, I slipped away to the hotel lobby, confirming with the concierge that my arrangement for the Rolls-Royce was in place. The sleek black Phantom was scheduled to arrive in 30 minutes, positioned prominently at the front entrance just as guests would be moving between the ballroom and garden for the evening portion of the celebration. "Of course, Ms. Wilson," the concierge assured me. "The driver will call when he's approaching." I rejoined the reception, accepting my cousin Olivia's backhanded invitation to join her table. "Since you're sitting all alone, poor thing." Jessica's mother stopped by, champagne flute in hand, to inquire loudly about my living situation. "Still with your parents, is it? How accommodating they are. Michael was telling us they've converted their home office so you have proper space." "Actually, I have my own space downtown now," I replied mildly. "But they've been very supportive." "Downtown? How enterprising. A shared workspace, is it?" "Jessica's friend runs one of those. They're very popular with freelancers and such." Before I could respond, my phone vibrated with a text from the chauffeur. "Arriving in 5 minutes, Ms. Wilson." "If you'll excuse me," I said, rising from the table. "I need to step out briefly." I made my way through the reception, pausing briefly to compliment my new sister-in-law on the beautiful celebration. As I approached the hotel's main entrance, I could see the Rolls-Royce making its stately approach up the circular driveway, its polished surface gleaming in the early evening sun. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Just as the car came to a stop, a group of wedding guests, including Jessica's parents and my brother, emerged from the hotel, heading toward the garden for the planned sunset champagne toast. The uniformed chauffeur stepped out and opened the passenger door with a flourish. "Ms. Wilson," he announced, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Your car is ready whenever you'd like to depart." Jessica's mother stopped mid-stride, her expression shifting from confusion to disbelief as she registered both the luxury vehicle and its apparent connection to me. My brother's double take would have been comical under different circumstances. "Thank you, Thomas," I replied to the chauffeur with casual familiarity. "I'll be staying through the cake cutting, but I appreciate you bringing the contracts for me to review." I accepted the portfolio he handed me, actually containing the magazine interview request and some mosaic marketing materials, and turned to find most of the wedding party staring in bewilderment. "Emma," my brother began, his confusion evident. "What is all this?" "Just some work materials I needed," I explained calmly, "and my transportation for later." "That's yours?" Jessica's mother managed, her voice higher than usual as she gestured toward the gleaming Rolls-Royce Phantom. "It is," I replied, simply offering no further explanation. The portfolio tucked under my arm felt like a shield, giving me confidence I might have lacked just months earlier. An awkward silence descended over the small gathering, broken only when my father approached. His expression a mixture of confusion and curiosity. He glanced from me to the luxury vehicle and back again, questions evident in his eyes but remaining unasked. "Dad, I was just about to head back in for the cake cutting," I said, nodding to the chauffeur who understood the unspoken instruction to wait. "Did you need me for something?" "Your mother was wondering where you'd gone," he replied, his eyes still fixed on the Rolls-Royce. "Emma, is there something you'd like to share with us?" Jessica's mother hadn't moved, clearly waiting for an explanation that would satisfy her curiosity while confirming her preconceptions about me. My brother Michael stood beside his new father-in-law, his expression shifting from confusion to something that looked almost like concern. "Actually, there is," I decided, seeing an opening to reclaim my narrative without overshadowing Michael's day. "But today is about Michael and Jessica. We can talk tomorrow, once the celebrations are complete." This diplomatic response seemed to both relieve and frustrate the gathered family members. Jessica's mother opened her mouth as if to press, further, but her husband placed a gentle hand on her arm, steering her toward the garden. "The toast, Eleanor. We shouldn't keep the photographer waiting." As the group dispersed, only Michael lingered, his curiosity evidently overriding his desire to rejoin his wedding festivities. "Seriously, what's going on? Did you rent that car to make some kind of statement?" The assumption stung more than it should have. Even presented with clear evidence of success, his first instinct was to assume I was putting on a show, creating an illusion rather than achieving something real. "It's not a rental, Michael, and I'm not making a statement. I'm just living my life, which has changed significantly since we last really talked." I kept my tone neutral, determined not to create a scene at his wedding. He studied me for a moment, conflict evident in his expression. "Look, if you're in some kind of trouble, financially or otherwise, you can tell me. Whatever this is," he gestured toward the Rolls-Royce, "doesn't need to be some elaborate cover story." The concern in his voice was genuine, which made his complete misreading of the situation all the more frustrating. In his worldview, the only explanation for my apparent prosperity was trouble or deception. Success on my own terms simply wasn't a possibility he could entertain. "I'm not in trouble, Michael. Quite the opposite. But this really isn't the time or place for that conversation." I gestured toward the hotel where his bride would be wondering about his absence. "Your wife is waiting, and so are your guests." He hesitated, clearly torn between pursuing answers and returning to his responsibilities. "Promise me we'll talk tomorrow, before Jessica and I leave for the honeymoon." "I promise," I agreed, relieved when he finally turned and headed back toward the reception. I instructed the chauffeur to return after the cake cutting, then made my way back into the ballroom where the celebration continued in full swing. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of cake, dancing, and increasingly curious glances from family members who had clearly heard about the mysterious Rolls-Royce waiting outside. My cousin Olivia cornered me near the dessert table, her expression a study in calculated nonchalance. "So, Emma, someone mentioned you arrived in quite the vehicle. New boyfriend with expensive taste?" "No boyfriend," I replied, selecting a chocolate truffle from the elegant display. "New company with sustainable growth." She blinked, processing this unexpected response. "Company? You mean that little project you were working on?" "Mosaic Technologies," I confirmed. "We just closed a significant investment round and moved into our new headquarters in the Seaport District. The official announcement goes out next week." Olivia's expression shifted from skepticism to cautious reassessment. As the marketing director for a financial services firm, she recognized the significance of securing substantial investment. "Seaport office space doesn't come cheap. You must have raised, what, $1 million or so?" "Actually, our most recent valuation puts us closer to 8 figures, I replied, keeping my tone conversational, though I couldn't quite suppress a small smile at her widening eyes. Like I said, sustainable growth. Word traveled quickly after that. I could track the ripple effect of Olivia's informed gossip as groups of relatives and in-laws glanced in my direction with renewed interest. Jessica's mother, who had avoided me since the driveway encounter, suddenly appeared at my side during one of the final dances. "Emma, dear, I wonder if we might have lunch next week. I'd love to hear more about your business ventures." Her smile didn't quite reach her eyes, but her tone had shifted from condescension to careful respect. "That sounds lovely, but I'm afraid I'll be quite busy with our expansion. Perhaps once Michael and Jessica return from their honeymoon, we can all get together." The polite deflection came easily, neither accepting nor completely rejecting her obvious attempt to recalibrate our relationship. As the evening wound down and guests began to depart, my mother approached, her expression a complex mixture of confusion and what looked almost like hurt. "Emma, why didn't you tell us about whatever this is? Your father saw that car outside, and everyone is suddenly talking about some company you've started." "I was waiting for the right time, Mom," I explained gently. "Tonight is Michael's night. I didn't want to distract from that." "But we're your family," she persisted, lowering her voice as a group of departing guests passed nearby. "We've been worried about you, and all this time you've been—" "What exactly? Running a successful business? Buying luxury cars?" The hurt in her voice was genuine, making me realize that what I'd interpreted as lack of faith in my abilities might have been something else entirely. Concern that I wasn't sharing my life with them, regardless of whether that life was succeeding or struggling. "I'll explain everything tomorrow," I promised. "The full story, the whole journey." "But yes, Mom, I've built something I'm proud of, something substantial." My father joined us, his expression more curious than upset. "Is that why you haven't been coming to Sunday dinners these past few months? Too busy with this new venture of yours?" "Partly," I admitted. "But also partly because I needed to prove this to myself before I presented it to the family. I needed to know it was real and sustainable." He nodded slowly, seeming to understand this reasoning in a way my mother still struggled with. "Well, it seems real enough now. That's quite a statement parked outside." "The car is just a car, Dad. What matters is what we've built. The company, the team, the product. That's what I want to show you." The sincerity in my voice seemed to reach them both, their expressions softening slightly. "Tomorrow, then," my mother agreed, reaching out to squeeze my hand. "The full story." As promised, the Rolls-Royce returned after the cake cutting. When the reception finally ended around midnight, I said goodbye to my parents, promising again to meet them for brunch the following day. The chauffeur held the door as I slid into the butter-soft leather interior, aware of the many eyes watching from the hotel entrance. The quiet luxury of the car's interior was a stark contrast to the emotional complexity of the evening. As we pulled away from the Grand Harbor Hotel, I exhaled deeply, feeling tension I hadn't fully acknowledged begin to dissolve. The night had unfolded differently than I'd anticipated. What I'd imagined as a moment of triumphant revelation had instead become something more nuanced, the beginning of a recalibration of family dynamics that had been fixed for decades. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "How did it go? Did you show them all what you've built?" "Not exactly," I replied, watching Boston's nightscape glide past the window. But I opened the door. "Tomorrow I'll show them everything." The next morning, I arrived at the brunch spot 30 minutes early, selecting a quiet corner table with good privacy for what promised to be an intense family conversation. I brought my laptop and several presentation materials we'd prepared for investor meetings, determined to give my family the complete picture of Mosaic's journey and success. My parents arrived precisely on time, my father's punctuality seemingly unaffected by the previous night's celebrations. My mother looked slightly tired but impeccably dressed as always, her expression a mixture of curiosity and residual confusion from the previous evening's revelations. "Before Michael gets here, I want to see this business of yours," my father said after we'd ordered coffee, getting straight to the point as was his habit. "The real thing, not just the fancy car." I opened my laptop, turning the screen toward them. "This is Mosaic Technologies," I began, showing them our company website with its professional design and impressive client roster. "We develop integration software that helps creative teams work more efficiently across different platforms and tools." Over the next 20 minutes, I walked them through Mosaic's evolution, from initial concept through prototype, early customers, David's investment, and our recent expansion. I showed them photos of our Seaport office, introduced them to key team members through our staff page, and outlined our growth projections for the coming year. My mother's expression shifted gradually from polite interest to genuine surprise, as the scale of what I'd built became clear. "Emma, this is substantial," she said finally, echoing the word I'd used to describe Mosaic to myself that night in the office. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" "I wanted to be sure," I admitted. After the last startup failed, after moving back home, I couldn't bear to see that look of worried disappointment again if this didn't work out. I needed to know it was real before I shared it. "We wouldn't have been disappointed," my mother protested, though her tone lacked conviction. "We just want you to be secure and happy." "Mom, you and Dad have always equated security with traditional paths, stable jobs, clear career trajectories, retirement plans. What I'm building doesn't fit that model, at least not yet. The potential is enormous, but so are the risks." My father, who had been quietly absorbing the information, finally spoke. "The Rolls-Royce seems to suggest you're past the main risks." I smiled, appreciating his practical approach to assessing success. That was perhaps an indulgence, but yes, we're on solid ground now. David's investment gave us runway, and our customer growth has been exceptional. We're profitable as of last quarter, which is rare for companies at our stage. "And the office space, that can't be cheap," he pressed, still the accountant looking for financial vulnerabilities. "We negotiated favorable terms, and the address adds credibility with enterprise clients. It's a calculated investment in our growth." I'd answered similar questions from investors enough times that the justification came easily. My mother was still processing the scale of my news. "All those times we thought you were struggling, avoiding family events because you were embarrassed about your situation. You were actually building this?" "I was working," I confirmed. 18-hour days sometimes. The early stage is all-consuming if you want to succeed, but I should have shared more with you both. I'm sorry for that part." The arrival of Michael and Jessica interrupted our conversation. My brother looked slightly hungover but happy, his new wife radiant, despite what must have been minimal sleep. They slid into the remaining seats at our table, Michael's eyes immediately going to my laptop screen still displaying Mosaic's investor presentation. "So this is real," he said without preamble. "You actually have a successful company." "Good. Morning to you too," I replied, unable to completely suppress the hint of satisfaction in my voice. "And yes, it's very real." Jessica leaned forward, her interest seemingly genuine as she studied the screen. "This looks impressive, Emma. Is this why you have the Rolls Royce?" "The car was a personal milestone celebration," I explained, feeling slightly self-conscious about the extravagance in the clear light of day. We'd just finalized our new office space, secured our Series A funding, and hit our 1,000 customer mark. After 2 years of ramen noodles and sleeping on office couches, I decided to mark the occasion. Michael's expression was difficult to read, a mixture of surprise, reassessment, and something that might have been grudging respect. 1,000 customers? What kind of revenue does that represent? Always the practical one, focusing immediately on the financial metrics. I decided to be transparent, turning to a slide in our investor deck that outlined our financial projections. We're currently generating just over $180,000 monthly in recurring revenue, with a 94% retention rate and 12% month-over-month growth. At current trajectories, we'll hit annual recurring revenue of $3 million by year-end. My brother whistled softly, financial implications immediately clear to him. "And your ownership stake?" "Rachel and I each hold 5% after David's investment. The remaining 5% is allocated to our employee option pool." The numbers felt surreal sometimes, even to me. The translation of endless work and sacrifice into concrete value that the world recognized. "So, you're a millionaire," Michael stated flatly. "On paper, at least." "At current valuation, yes." There was no point being coy about it. Though most of that is illiquid until we have an exit event. Jessica looked between us, perhaps sensing the complex emotions beneath our factual exchange. "This is amazing, Emma. You should be incredibly proud." Her sincere praise caught me off guard. Throughout our acquaintance, Jessica had always seemed to view me through Michael's lens, as his somewhat directionless sister who couldn't quite find her path. This direct acknowledgement of my achievement felt like a shift in how she saw me. "Thank you," I replied, genuinely appreciative. "It's been a challenging journey, but worth every moment." My mother, who had been quietly absorbing the financial details, suddenly reached across the table to grasp my hand. "I wish you had told us, Emma. All this time we thought you were struggling." "I was struggling," I corrected gently. "Building? Something from nothing is constant struggle. But it was the right struggle, the one I chose. And I needed to walk that path on my own terms, without well-meaning suggestions about more stable alternatives." Michael had the grace to look slightly abashed at this indirect reference to his many attempts to direct me toward conventional employment. "I was just trying to help," he said defensively. "You seemed lost after that first startup crashed." "I was recalibrating, not lost," I replied. "Sometimes what looks like failure from the outside is actually an essential redirection." My father, ever the practical one, steered the conversation toward more concrete matters. "I want to see this office of yours and meet this investor. David, was it? Perhaps we could all go there after brunch." The suggestion surprised me. Throughout my life, my father had maintained clear boundaries between family and work, rarely visiting even Michael's hospital despite numerous invitations. That he wanted to see Mosaic's physical space represented a significant acknowledgement. "I'd like that," I agreed. "The team won't be there on Sunday, but I can give you the full tour." As brunch progressed, the conversation shifted between Mosaic details and wedding recollections, creating a strange juxtaposition of Michael's traditional milestone and my unconventional success. Jessica's parents stopped by our table briefly on their way out, their manner toward me noticeably more respectful than the previous evening. "Emma, we'll have to have you over for dinner once the newlyweds return from their honeymoon," Eleanor offered, her tone carefully calibrated between friendliness and networking interest. "Howard has some connections in the tech investment space who might be useful for your venture." "Thank you, Eleanor. I'd be happy to discuss it once Michael and Jessica are settled." My response was polite but non-committal, a stark contrast to how eagerly I might have grasped at such an offer just a year earlier. After brunch, our small family group drove to the Seaport District in separate cars. My parents and the newlyweds following the now infamous Rolls-Royce through Boston's Sunday morning traffic. Pulling into the underground parking garage of Mosaic's building, I felt a strange mixture of pride and vulnerability. Sharing my professional world with my family represented a merging of identities I had deliberately kept separate. The building's lobby impressed them immediately. Sleek modern architecture with soaring ceilings and a wall of living plants beside the security desk. The guard recognized me despite the weekend, nodding respectfully as I signed in my family members as guests. "Good morning, Ms. Wilson. Working on Sunday again?" he asked, printing visitor badges. "Just showing my family our new space, Carlos. How's your son doing with those coding classes we talked about?" "Loving them, Ms. Wilson. He says he wants to work for Mosaic someday." This small exchange didn't escape my family's notice. Michael raised an eyebrow as we entered the elevator, clearly registering the respect in the security guard's manner. "You know the staff personally?" he asked as the elevator ascended to the 14th floor. "I make a point of it," I replied. "Carlos's son is 17 and interested in software development. We're sponsoring his participation in a coding boot camp this summer." "That's very corporate social responsibility of you," Michael observed, his tone suggesting he was still recalibrating his perception of me as a business leader rather than his struggling younger sister. The elevator opened directly into Mosaic's reception area, where our backlit company logo made an immediate impression against the backdrop of floor-to-ceiling windows framing Boston Harbor. The open concept office beyond featured collaborative work areas, glass-walled conference rooms, and a kitchen space that rivaled high-end apartments in design and amenities. "This is..." my mother began, turning slowly to take in the space. "This is extraordinary, Emma. We wanted an environment that reflected our values," I explained, leading them through the main work area. "Collaborative, transparent, but with space for focused work. The design facilitates the same kind of workflow integration that our software enables." My father ran his hand over a conference room table, assessing its quality with the eye of someone who valued craftsmanship. "Not exactly the garage startup I was picturing. We started in your downtown office, Dad, remember? But we outgrew it within 6 months." The reminder seemed to help him connect the struggling venture he'd supported with the successful enterprise now evident before him. I showed them my office, a glass-walled space with views of the harbor and a desk deliberately positioned to be visible to the team, reinforcing our transparent culture. Photos of our small team decorated one wall, while framed copies of our first customer contract and initial patent application hung on another. "Is that Rachel?" my mother asked, pointing to a photo of my co-founder and me at our first industry conference. "The friend who used to come over for dinner sometimes?" "Yes, she's our CTO, Chief Technology Officer. She built the original prototype and now leads our engineering team." Michael examined the patent application with professional interest. "You've patented your integration methodology? That's impressive foresight." "David's suggestion," I acknowledged. He recognized the long-term value of our approach beyond just the immediate product. As we completed the tour in the kitchen area, my father asked the question I'd been anticipating. "So, what happens next, Emma? Where does Mosaic go from here?" It was the first time he had engaged with my professional future as something substantial, rather than a temporary diversion before I found a real job. The shift wasn't lost on me. "We're focusing on enterprise expansion for the next 18 months, I explained, slipping easily into the pitch I'd refined through investor meetings. "Our current customer base is primarily small to mid-sized creative agencies, but we've had interest from several Fortune 500 companies who see applications beyond just creative workflows. With proper execution, we're looking at potential acquisition, offers within 2 to 3 years. Acquisition? You'd sell the company? My mother seemed surprised by this trajectory. That's typically how tech startups create liquidity for founders and investors, I explained. We build something valuable, demonstrate its market potential, then partner with a larger entity that can scale it globally. And then what? She pressed. You'd start something new? The question made me realize she was thinking beyond the business implications to what it would mean for me personally, a perspective that was uniquely maternal in its focus on my long-term fulfillment, rather than just financial outcomes. Possibly, I acknowledged. Or I might stay with the acquiring company in a leadership role, or take time to explore other interests. That decision is still a few years away. Michael had been unusually quiet during this exchange, studying the office with the careful assessment I recognized from his approach to complex surgical cases. Finally, he spoke, his tone more genuine than I'd heard from him in years. You've built something remarkable here, Em. Something substantive and meaningful. I was wrong about your path. I should have had more faith in your vision. The admission clearly cost him some pride, but its sincerity was unmistakable. Thank you, Michael. That means more than you might realize. The acknowledgement created a moment of connection between us that transcended our usual competitive dynamic. Jessica, who had been quietly observing the family dynamics unfold, added her own observation. I think what's most impressive isn't just the business success, but how clearly this reflects your values, Emma. This whole space, the way you interact with people like Carlos, it's authentically you. Her insight surprised me. Jessica had always seemed more aligned with Michael's pragmatic worldview, focused on conventional markers of success. That she recognized the personal alignment between Mosaic and my deeper values suggested I had perhaps misjudged her as well. As we prepared to leave, my mother lingered in the reception area, studying the company mission statement elegantly etched on a glass panel. Connecting creative minds across digital divides. This is what you were trying to explain to us all. Those times we pushed you toward more traditional paths, isn't it? She asked quietly. You weren't just being stubborn. You were working toward this specific vision. Yes, I confirmed simply. I couldn't always articulate it clearly, but this was always the direction, even when the path wasn't straight. She nodded slowly, a new understanding in her expression. I'm sorry we didn't see it sooner. It's okay, Mom. Sometimes things need to be built before they can be seen clearly. As we rode the elevator back to the lobby, my father surprised me with an unexpected question. That inheritance from your grandmother, is that what funded your initial development? Part of it, I confirmed, along with everything I had saved. It was just enough to build the prototype and keep us going until we had paying customers. He nodded thoughtfully. She would have approved. Margaret always said money sitting idle was money wasted. Better to build something with it. The comment created a sense of generational continuity I hadn't considered before. My grandmother's bakery, my father's accounting practice, and now Mosaic, each representing different forms of entrepreneurship adapted to their times and circumstances. In the building's lobby, Michael and Jessica prepared to depart for last-minute honeymoon preparations, our family gathering briefly to say goodbye. The interaction felt different now, the power dynamics subtly but meaningfully shifted by the morning's revelations. I expect a full demo of this software when we get back, Michael said, embracing me with genuine warmth. Maybe we could even use it at the hospital for coordinating between departments. I'll have Rachel set up a specialized healthcare workflow, I promised, recognizing his offer as both professional respect and a form of reconciliation. As they departed, my parents lingered, clearly reluctant to end this new connection to my professional world. "We're having the Andersons over for dinner next Sunday," my mother said tentatively. "I'd love for you to join us if you can. Bring Rachel too if she's available." The invitation represented another shift, acknowledgement of my co-founder as a significant person in my life rather than just a former college friend, and acceptance that Sunday dinners would now need to accommodate my schedule rather than vice versa. "I'll check our calendar," I agreed. "We might have a client implementation that weekend, but I'll try to make it work." My father, never comfortable with extended goodbyes, moved toward practical conclusions. "You'll need better tax planning with this kind of growth. Have your financial team call my office this week. There are some strategies you should consider before year-end." The offer of professional assistance rather than personal direction was his way of acknowledging my achievements while still providing paternal support. I accepted it in the spirit intended, promising to have our CFO connect with him. As they finally departed and I returned to my car alone, I felt a profound sense of completion, not of Mosaic's journey, which was still in its early stages, but of a personal transformation that had been years in the making. The Rolls-Royce that had seemed so important as a statement the previous evening now felt almost incidental to the real achievement. Building something authentic that reflected my values and vision, something that could stand on its own merits without requiring external validation. I drove home through Boston's Sunday afternoon traffic, already mentally preparing for the week ahead. We had client implementations scheduled, investor updates to prepare, and a key hire to finalize. The work was demanding but deeply satisfying, in a way I'd always sought but never quite found in more conventional roles. My phone buzzed with a text from Rachel. "How did the family reveal go? Scale of 1-10? I considered the question, reflecting on the complex emotions and shifting perceptions of the morning. 9-10, I replied finally. "They get it now. Really get it." Her response came immediately. "About time. See you tomorrow, boss lady. We've got a company to build." I smiled, turning onto the street leading to my downtown apartment. Not my parents' home in Newton, not the cramped space I'd shared with James, but my own place chosen and furnished according to my preferences, a physical manifestation of the independence I'd achieved. The security guard waved as I pulled into the underground garage, the Rolls-Royce attracting his usual appreciative glance. "Good weekend, Miss Wilson?" "Transformative," I replied, finding the word perfectly captured the past 24 hours. Absolutely transformative. 3 months after Michael and Jessica's wedding, Mosaic's trajectory shifted dramatically. We had been steadily building our client base among creative agencies when an unexpected email arrived from Clarissa Zhang, Chief Innovation Officer at Meridian Global, one of the largest media conglomerates in the world. The message was brief, but potentially life-changing. Impressive solution, potential enterprise application across our divisions. Available to discuss next steps? This wasn't just another client inquiry. It represented the enterprise breakthrough we'd been working toward, a validation that could accelerate our growth beyond anything we'd projected. I forwarded the email to Rachel and David immediately, adding only, "This changes everything." Within minutes, my phone rang with David's call. His normally measured tone carried an undercurrent of excitement I'd rarely heard from our veteran investor. "Emma, do you understand what this could mean? Meridian has over 50,000 employees across 12 divisions. If they deploy Mosaic, enterprise-wide, we're looking at a potential 8-figure annual contract." "I know," I replied, staring out my office window at Boston Harbor, trying to process the implications. "But they're notorious for extended procurement cycles. Even if they're interested, implementation could be 18 months away." Unless they're not approaching this through traditional procurement, David countered. Zhang's innovation team operates outside normal channels. They identify solutions they want and fast-track adoption. The fact that she reached out directly is significant. Rachel appeared in my doorway, tablet in hand, her expression reflecting the same controlled excitement I was feeling. "I've pulled Meridian's tech stack information from public sources," she announced, moving to the seat opposite my desk. "They're using exactly the fragmented creative workflow systems our platform was designed to integrate. This isn't just a good fit, it's perfect." The meeting with Clarissa Zhang was scheduled for the following week at Meridian's New York headquarters. David suggested bringing our full executive team, a signal that we considered this potential partnership significant enough to warrant our collective attention. The days leading up to the meeting were a blur of preparation. Refining our enterprise, demonstration, developing preliminary integration scenarios specific to Meridian's known systems, and rehearsing responses to potential technical objections. The night before our New York trip, I found myself unable to sleep, the magnitude of the opportunity keeping my mind racing. On impulse, I called my father, despite the late hour. He answered immediately, his voice alert despite it being nearly midnight. "Emma, is everything all right?" "Sorry for calling so late," I apologized. "Everything's fine. Better than fine, actually. We have a meeting tomorrow with Meridian Global. It could be transformative for Mosaic." There was a pause, and I could picture him sitting up in bed, processing the implications with his characteristic thoroughness. "Meridian. That's significant. What's the nature of their interest?" "Enterprise-wide integration of our platform. If it goes through, we'd be looking at a defining contract, the kind that changes a company's entire trajectory." Another pause. "And you're calling because you're nervous?" It wasn't a question, but an observation that cut straight to the heart of why I'd reached out. My father had always possessed this ability to distill emotional situations to their essence, though he usually applied it to business scenarios rather than personal ones. "Yes," I admitted. "This is bigger than anything we've pursued before. If we succeed, Mosaic becomes a major player overnight. If we fail—" "You won't fail," he interrupted, his tone matter of fact. "You might not close the deal tomorrow. These things take time, but you won't fail in the presentation. You know your product, you understand their needs, and you've prepared thoroughly." His confidence steadied me. "Thanks, Dad. I needed to hear that. Your grandmother faced a similar moment, you know," he continued, surprising me with the personal reference. "When she was approached about expanding the bakery into a regional chain, she called me the night before that meeting, too." This was new information, another piece of family history I hadn't been aware of. "What did you tell her?" "The same thing my father told me when I was considering whether to start my own accounting practice. Understand your value proposition completely, know precisely what problem you're solving for the client, and then present with conviction. The rest takes care of itself." The advice was simple but powerful, a distillation of entrepreneurial wisdom passed through generations of our family. "I wish I'd known these stories earlier," I said softly. "About Grandma's business decisions, about your early days building the practice." "We didn't think you were interested," he replied, a hint of regret in his voice. "You seemed so focused, on a different path, technology, startups, things outside our experience. Perhaps we should have made the connections clearer." The observation highlighted how much had changed in our relationship since Michael's wedding. Where once there had been misunderstanding and missed connections, there was now a growing bridge of mutual respect and recognition of shared experiences across different fields and generations. "Get some sleep, Emma," my father advised. "Call me after the meeting, whatever the outcome." "I will. Thanks, Dad." The next morning, our team gathered in the lobby of our New York hotel, everyone dressed in what Rachel called our enterprise serious but innovative attire. Professional. but with subtle creative elements that reflected Mosaic's culture. David reviewed our presentation strategy one final time as we traveled by town car to Meridian's impressive Midtown headquarters. The building's soaring atrium spoke to the company's global influence, screens displaying content from their various media properties, awards prominently showcased in glass cases, and a steady stream of well-dressed executives moving purposefully through security checkpoints. We were escorted to a glass-walled conference room on the 38th floor, the Manhattan skyline providing a dramatic backdrop to our most important meeting to date. Clarissa Zhang entered precisely on time, accompanied by her innovation team and unexpectedly, Meridian's Chief Technology Officer, Alan Westfield, a presence that signaled serious intent. Introductions were made, coffee served, and then Zhang got straight to the point with refreshing directness. "We've been monitoring Mosaic's development for the past 6 months," she began, surprising us with the revelation that we'd been on their radar long before the initial outreach. "What impressed us wasn't just your technical solution, but the methodology behind it. You've approached creative workflow integration from the user experience backward, rather than forcing users to adapt to technology." Her assessment validated our core design philosophy, but her next statement truly captured our attention. "We're not interested in a standard vendor relationship. We're exploring strategic partnership possibilities that could include significant investment or potential acquisition, depending on how our initial implementation performs." David, with decades of negotiation experience, maintained a carefully neutral expression, but I caught the slight shift in his posture that betrayed his excitement. This wasn't just about a client contract. Meridian was potentially positioning itself as an acquirer, a development that accelerated our long-term exit strategy by at least 2 years. The meeting extended well beyond its scheduled hour, evolving into a deep technical discussion as Westfield probed the architecture of our platform, testing both its current capabilities and future scalability. Rachel handled these questions with impressive command, never over-promising but demonstrating how our system could adapt to Meridian's complex requirements. When we finally concluded, Zhang walked us out personally, a courtesy that spoke volumes in corporate hierarchy terms. We'll need to conduct technical due diligence, of course," she said as we waited for the elevator. "If you're amenable, we'd like to send our integration team to your Boston offices next week to begin that process." "We'd welcome that," I replied, maintaining professional composure despite the internal exhilaration her words triggered. "Our technical documentation is comprehensive, and we can prepare sandbox environments for your team to explore." "Excellent." She handed me her business card with her direct number handwritten on the back. "Call me with any questions. We move quickly when we find the right solution." In the privacy of the elevator descending to the lobby, our team maintained professional restraint until the doors closed behind the last Meridian executive. Then the carefully contained excitement burst forth. Rachel actually jumped. David's face split into a rare full smile, and our newly hired chief marketing officer let out a whoop that drew curious glances from passing executives. "Did that just happen?" Rachel asked, her voice pitched higher than normal. "Did Meridian Global just fast-track us for potential acquisition?" "Not just acquisition, strategic partnership with implementation first," David clarified, his experienced eye catching the nuances. "That's actually better. It means they want to verify value before committing, but they're serious enough to invest resources immediately." As we exited the building, the significance of what had just occurred continued to unfold in my mind. Mosaic had just taken a quantum leap from promising startup to legitimate acquisition target. The years of work, the risks taken, the doubts overcome, all crystallized in that conference room into tangible, undeniable validation. Once outside, David suggested a celebratory lunch, but I hesitated. "You all go ahead. There's something I need to do first." I stepped away from the group, pulling out my phone to fulfill my promise from the night before. My father answered on the second ring. "How did it go?" "Better than we could have imagined," I replied, unable to keep the emotion from my voice. They're sending a technical team to Boston next week to begin integration planning, with potential strategic partnership or acquisition on the table. His intake of breath was audible. Emma, that's extraordinary. Congratulations. It's early stages, I cautioned, the practical Wilson family trait asserting itself. Many things could still derail this. But you've opened the door, he countered. That's the essential first step. Your grandmother would be immensely proud. The reference to my grandmother, now a touchstone in our evolving relationship, brought unexpected tears to my eyes. I wish she could see this. She saw it in you long before anyone else did, my father said quietly. Why do you think she left you that inheritance with those specific instructions? Build something that lasts. She knew what you were capable of creating. The insight shifted something profound in my understanding of family dynamics and legacies. What I had once perceived as a family that didn't understand my ambitions now appeared in a different light, a lineage of entrepreneurs who expressed their drive in different ways across generations, but shared a common thread of building and creating value. Thanks, Dad. For everything, I managed, blinking back tears on a busy New York sidewalk. Go celebrate with your team, he advised. You've earned it. The weeks following the Meridian meeting transformed Mosaic in ways both expected and surprising. Their technical team arrived as promised, occupying our largest conference room for an intensive 2-week assessment of our platform's capabilities. Their presence created a buzz throughout our office, with team members understanding instinctively that we were under evaluation not just as a vendor, but as a potential acquisition. Rachel thrived under the technical scrutiny, confidently guiding Meridian's engineers through our architecture and demonstrating how it could scale to their enterprise requirements. What impressed them most, according to feedback that filtered back through their team leads, was not just our current functionality, but our forward-thinking approach to future integration challenges. They expected to find limitations they could exploit in negotiation, Rachel reported after overhearing a conversation between 2 Meridian engineers. Instead, they're discovering capabilities they hadn't even considered requesting. We're exceeding their technical assessment criteria. By the end of their evaluation, Meridian's team had developed a phased implementation plan that would begin with their digital content division, a group of about 2,000 creative professionals spread across 3 continents. This initial deployment would serve as a proof of concept before expanding to other divisions. What we hadn't anticipated was how quickly news of Meridian's interest would spread through our industry. 3 days after their technical team departed, I received calls from 2 other major media companies inquiring about enterprise implementations. David explained the phenomenon with his characteristic insight. Meridian is a market leader. Their technology decisions are closely watched. You're benefiting from validation by association. If you're good enough for them, others want to at least evaluate you. This industry attention accelerated our growth curve dramatically. Our sales team, previously focused on mid-sized creative agencies, now juggled inquiries from Fortune 500 companies. We quickly implemented new enterprise demonstration protocols and expanded our implementation team to handle the increased interest. Amidst this whirlwind of activity, I maintained our family connections with a new appreciation for their importance in my life. Sunday dinners at my parents' home became a regular commitment again, though now they accommodated my schedule rather than expecting me to conform to theirs. More significantly, these gatherings evolved from obligation to genuine enjoyment as our conversations incorporated business discussions where my father, mother, and even Michael contributed perspectives from their different professional worlds. One Sunday, about a month after the Meridian evaluation, my brother arrived at dinner without Jessica, explaining that she was attending a friend's baby shower. As we helped our mother prepare the meal, he seemed unusually thoughtful, chopping vegetables with mechanical precision while clearly preoccupied. Everything okay? I asked, bumping his shoulder gently in the familiar sibling gesture that had been absent from our interactions for years. He glanced toward the living room to ensure our parents weren't within earshot before responding. Jessica's pregnant. We just confirmed it yesterday. Michael, that's wonderful news, I exclaimed, genuinely happy for him despite our complicated history. Why the secrecy? Mom and Dad will be thrilled. We will be, he qualified, his expression unusually vulnerable. But it's early days, and with Jessica's family history of complications, we're being cautious about announcements. The trust implied in sharing this news with me before our parents represented a significant shift in our relationship. Pre-Mosaic, Michael had rarely confided in me about anything important, our interactions limited to his advice, often unsolicited, and my defensive responses. Your secret's safe with me, I assured him, but when you're ready to tell them, they're going. To be over the moon. First grandchild. Mom's been dropping hints for years. He smiled, some tension visibly easing from his shoulders. Thanks, Em. And while we're sharing news, I've been meaning to tell you how impressed I am with what you've built. Jessica's father mentioned that his investment group has been following Mosaic's growth with considerable interest. His exact words. The acknowledgement meant more coming from Michael than it might have from anyone else. His approval had been a currency I'd sought throughout childhood and young adulthood, always feeling it remained just out of reach. That means a lot, I said simply. Especially from you. I was wrong about your path, he admitted, resuming his vegetable chopping with characteristic precision. I confused conventional success with meaningful achievement. What you've created with Mosaic is both innovative and substantial. Before I could respond to this unprecedented apology, our father entered the kitchen, immediately sensing the charged atmosphere between us. Everything all right in here? Your mother's wondering if those vegetables will be ready before midnight. Just having a long overdue conversation, Michael replied, exchanging a meaningful glance with me. Sibling stuff. Our father looked between us, a hint of pleased surprise crossing his features at this evidence of reconciliation. Well, don't let it prevent dinner from happening. Your mother's already set the table twice trying to get it perfect. As he returned to the living room, Michael turned to me with uncharacteristic hesitation. I should have asked earlier, but would you consider being the baby's godmother? When the time comes, I mean. Jessica suggested it, actually. The request caught me completely off guard, emotion welling unexpectedly. I'd be honored, I managed, impulsively hugging my brother for the first time in years. He returned the embrace awkwardly at first, then with genuine warmth. We should get these vegetables out there before Mom sends a search party, he said gruffly, clearing his throat as we separated. That evening's dinner felt different, a subtle but meaningful shift in family dynamics that extended beyond just Michael's and my improved relationship. My parents engaged with my business updates not out of polite interest, but with genuine curiosity and occasionally insightful questions. My father had clearly been reading industry publications to better understand Mosaic's market position, while my mother surprised me by asking specifically about our company culture and team development strategies. I was speaking with my book. Club friend Diane, her daughter works at a tech company in Cambridge, she explained. Apparently, these office environments and how they support employees are quite important in your industry. I'm curious how Mosaic approaches that aspect. The question revealed both her effort to connect with my world and a genuine interest in aspects beyond just financial metrics, the human elements of building an organization that reflected my values. I described our collaborative spaces, flexible, work policies, and professional development opportunities, watching her absorb these details with thoughtful consideration. It sounds like you've created not just a product, but a community, she observed. That's something sustainable regardless of what happens with any particular client or technology trend. Her insight surprised me. a perspective I hadn't expected, from someone I'd always associated with traditional career paths and conventional metrics of success. It suggested that perhaps my parents had understood more about my ambitions than I'd given them credit for, even if they'd expressed their concerns through the lens of their own experiences. 2 days after that family dinner, Clarissa Zhang called with the news we'd been hoping for. Meridian was ready to proceed with the initial implementation and wanted to discuss terms for a broader strategic partnership. The conversation would include their corporate development team, the division responsible for acquisitions and major investments. "This is moving faster than standard procedure," she acknowledged. "But our technical assessment was overwhelmingly positive, and frankly, we're concerned about competitive interest. We'd like to secure our position with Mosaic before others recognize what we've seen." The meeting was scheduled for the following week at our Boston offices, another positive sign as it indicated their willingness to come to us rather than summoning us to their corporate headquarters. David advised bringing in specialized legal counsel for what would likely be complex negotiations involving potential investment or acquisition structures. "This is where things get serious," he cautioned during our preparatory session. "Meridian will have a team of corporate attorneys whose job is to secure the most favorable terms possible for their side. We need equivalent firepower." He recommended Patricia Alvarez, a technology M&A specialist who had represented several successful exits in his previous ventures. When she arrived at our offices for preliminary discussions, her direct approach immediately instilled confidence. Based on Meridian's behavior pattern in previous acquisitions, they'll open with a structured partnership that includes right of first refusal for full acquisition, she predicted. They'll want to see successful implementation before committing completely, which actually works in your favor by potentially increasing valuation after demonstrated enterprise success. With Patricia's guidance, we developed a negotiation strategy that would protect Mosaic's interests while accommodating Meridian's desire for preferential positioning. The approach balanced immediate benefits, an enterprise contract with their digital content division, with longer-term considerations about company control and eventual acquisition terms. The day before Meridian's corporate development team arrived, I received an unexpected call from Jessica. "Emma, I hope I'm not interrupting anything important," she began, sounding uncharacteristically tentative. "Michael mentioned you have a big meeting tomorrow." "Just final preparations," I assured her, curious about the purpose of her call. While our relationship had improved significantly since the wedding, we rarely contacted each other directly, without Michael's involvement. "I was wondering if you might have time for coffee this afternoon," she continued. "There's something I'd like to discuss with you, about family matters." Intrigued and slightly concerned, I agreed to meet her at a cafe near Massachusetts General Hospital where she worked as a pediatric nurse. When I arrived, Jessica was already seated in a quiet corner, her typically perfect appearance slightly softened, perhaps by the early stages of pregnancy that remained our shared secret. "Thank you for making time," she said as I joined her, "especially with everything happening at Mosaic." "Of course! Is everything okay with the pregnancy?" I asked, lowering my voice despite the privacy of our location. "Everything's fine," she assured me quickly. "This isn't about that. Well, not directly. It's about family traditions and legacies." She took a careful sip of her herbal tea before continuing. "Michael told me about your grandmother's inheritance, how it helped fund Mosaic's beginnings. And your father mentioned this tradition of entrepreneurship in your family that spans generations." I nodded, still uncertain where this conversation was heading. "My family doesn't have anything like that," Jessica continued. "We have social connections and appropriate careers, but nothing self-built, nothing created from personal vision. With the baby coming, I've been thinking about what values and traditions we want to pass down." Her vulnerability surprised me. Throughout our acquaintance, Jessica had always projected confidence and certainty about her place in the world. This glimpse of self-reflection revealed complexity I hadn't previously recognized. I was wondering if you might tell me more about your grandmother. What made her take that risk with the bakery? How she built something lasting? Michael says you're very similar to her in ways he's only recently understood. The request touched me deeply, a recognition of family history and values that transcended surface differences. Over the next hour, I shared what I knew of my grandmother's journey, supplemented by stories my father had only recently begun sharing. Jessica listened intently, occasionally asking thoughtful questions that revealed genuine interest rather than polite conversation. As our coffee concluded, she surprised me with an unexpected request. Would you consider mentoring me on some basic business principles? Nothing formal, just occasional conversations. With the baby coming, I'm thinking about developing a side project, pediatric nurse education resources that could eventually become something sustainable. The request represented a significant evolution in our relationship, from my being the struggling sister to a respected advisor whose input was valued. I'd be happy to, I agreed. And I think it's wonderful that you're considering building something of your own. Watching what you've created with Mosaic changed my perspective, she admitted. I always viewed career success in terms of climbing. Existing ladders. You showed me there's value in building new structures entirely. As we parted outside the cafe, Jessica hugged me spontaneously, a gesture that would have seemed impossible just months earlier at the wedding. Good luck tomorrow with Meridian, she said. Michael and I are both cheering for you. I returned to Mosaic's offices feeling a curious sense of completion, as if various fragments of my life were finally aligning in coherent patterns rather than competing narratives. Whatever happened with Meridian tomorrow would affect Mosaic's business trajectory, but the personal foundation I'd built felt increasingly solid, supported by family connections I had once believed were irrevocably strained. The next morning, our office buzzed with anticipation. The reception area had been meticulously prepared, our conference room arranged for optimal presentation, and key team members briefed on their roles in demonstrating Mosaic's enterprise capabilities. Rachel paced nervously in my office, reviewing technical specifications one final time despite knowing them perfectly. This is really happening, she said, pausing at the window overlooking the harbor. When we were working out of your dad's old office, eating ramen and sleeping on floor cushions, did you ever imagine we'd be here? Negotiating with Meridian Global about potential acquisition? Honestly, yes, I admitted. Not the specifics, but this level of achievement. It's what kept me going through all those uncertain phases. The conviction that what we were building had this kind of potential. Rachel studied me with a curious expression. Your confidence used to drive me crazy sometimes. When everything looked impossible, you'd just calmly insist we'd figure it out. I thought it was delusion or naivety, but it wasn't, was it? It was some kind of deep-seated certainty. Maybe it was my grandmother's influence, I suggested, thinking of my recent conversation with Jessica. Building something that lasts requires believing it can exist before there's tangible evidence. Our philosophical moment was interrupted by our receptionist announcing Meridian's arrival. The corporate development team had come in force, 6 executives including Clarissa Zhang, Alan Westfield, and their chief strategy officer, Marcus Bell, known throughout the industry as a key architect of Meridian's acquisition strategy. They settled into our conference room. I felt a momentary flash of imposter syndrome, the lingering echo of being perceived as the poor sister who couldn't quite figure things out. Then I looked around at what we had built, our sophisticated platform visualized on the presentation screens, our growing team visible through the glass walls, the tangible evidence of vision transformed into reality. Whatever happened in this negotiation, Mosaic had already succeeded in ways that mattered most to me personally. The negotiations with Meridian unfolded over 8 intense hours that day. Marcus Bell opened with exactly the structure Patricia had predicted. A phased partnership beginning with enterprise implementation across their digital content division, followed by an investment option that would give Meridian right of first refusal for future acquisition. The initial valuation they proposed, $42 million, exceeded our most optimistic projections by nearly 15%. Patricia calmly countered with a structure that protected our strategic flexibility, while accommodating Meridian's clear interest in securing a privileged position. By late afternoon, we had framework agreement that satisfied both sides. Meridian would implement Mosaic enterprise-wide over an 18-month rollout with a $15 million strategic investment for 20% equity and exclusive acquisition rights for 24 months following successful implementation. When the Meridian team finally departed, exhausted but satisfied, our office erupted in celebration. Rachel threw her arms around me, her usual professional composure momentarily abandoned. "We did it," she whispered, tears in her eyes. "We actually did it." David, typically restrained in his emotional expressions, allowed himself a broad smile. "Textbook execution," he said, patting my shoulder with uncharacteristic affection. "Your grandmother would be extraordinarily proud." The reference to my grandmother, now a touchstone across the disparate parts of my life, brought everything full circle. From her modest inheritance that had funded our initial prototype to this landmark deal that validated our vision on a global scale. Her influence had been the invisible thread connecting determination with outcome. That evening, after the celebration with our team concluded, I drove to my parents' home in Newton, arriving unannounced just as dusk settled over the familiar neighborhood. My mother answered the door, surprise evident in her expression. "Emma, we weren't expecting you. Is everything all right?" "Everything's perfect," I assured her, stepping inside the house that had once represented retreat, but now felt like connection. "Is Dad home?" "There's something I want to share with both of you." My father emerged from his study, reading glasses perched on his nose, curiosity in his eyes. "This looks important," he observed, noting my expression. "Good news or challenging news?" "The best kind," I replied, following them into the living room where I'd spent so many hours during my post-startup failure phase. We closed the deal with Meridian today. $15 million strategic investment with enterprise implementation across their divisions. $42 million valuation. My mother gasped, the numbers translating even to her non-business-oriented perspective as extraordinary. My father removed his glasses slowly, his methodical gesture failing to mask the pride that transformed his features. "Emma, that's remarkable achievement." "I wanted you both to be the first to know," I explained, emotion making my voice slightly unsteady. "Before the press releases or industry announcements, because you were there at the beginning, even when you didn't fully understand what I was trying to build." My mother moved to sit beside me on the sofa, taking my hand in hers. "We always believed in you, Emma. We just worried because the path seemed so uncertain, so different from anything we understood." "I know that now," I acknowledged. "But there's something else I want to share with you, something I've been considering since the Meridian discussions began." They waited expectantly as I gathered my thoughts, wanting to articulate this next step with the precision it deserved. Grandma's inheritance made Mosaic possible. Without that initial funding, we couldn't have built the prototype that attracted our first customers. I want to honor that legacy by creating something similar for future entrepreneurs in our family. My father leaned forward slightly, intrigued by the direction of my thoughts. "What are you envisioning?" "A family foundation," I explained. "Funded initially from my Mosaic equity, designed specifically to support entrepreneurial ventures by future generations of Wilsons. Not just financial support, but mentorship, connections, resources, everything I wished I'd had access to when I was starting out." "The Wilson Legacy Foundation," my mother suggested, surprising me with her immediate embrace of the concept. "To nurture innovative thinking across generations." My father nodded slowly, the accountant in him already calculating potential structures and tax implications, while the parent appreciated the deeper significance. Your grandmother would consider this the perfect application of her principle. Building something that truly lasts, beyond any single venture or generation. That's exactly what I was thinking, I agreed, relieved and touched by their immediate understanding. I'd like you both to be founding board members, along with me, and eventually Michael, when he's ready to participate. The conversation extended late into the evening as we brainstormed possibilities for the foundation: scholarship programs, incubator space, mentorship networks connecting family resources across different industries and experiences. What had begun as a simple announcement of Mosaic's success transformed into collaborative planning for a legacy that would extend far beyond any individual achievement. As I prepared to leave, my father disappeared briefly into his study, returning with a small wooden box I'd never seen before. "This seems like the appropriate moment for this," he said, placing it in my hands. "Your grandmother left it with specific instructions that it should be given to you when you had built something worthy of continuation." The box contained a simple gold necklace with a pendant in the shape of an oak tree, modest in material value but profound in symbolism. Accompanying it was a handwritten note in my grandmother's distinctive script. "Roots matter, Emma. They provide stability for the branches that reach toward new skies. Wear this as a reminder that innovation grows best from strong foundations." Tears filled my eyes as my father fastened the necklace around my neck, the pendant resting against my collarbone as if it had always belonged there. "She knew," I whispered, touching the tree design with reverent fingers. "Somehow she knew what I would build, long before I understood it myself. She recognized something in you that mirrored her own determination," my father confirmed. "The same quality I see in Michael in his medical pursuits, though expressed differently. That Wilson persistence that transforms vision into reality. This connection across generations, the recognition of shared qualities expressed through different avenues, felt like the final piece clicking into place in my understanding of family legacy. What I had once perceived as lack of support had actually been concern filtered through different experiential lenses. The entrepreneurial spirit I'd thought unique to my approach had actually been a family inheritance, expressed differently across changing times and circumstances. 2 days later, Mosaic's partnership with Meridian was announced to the industry. The press release triggered immediate reaction, our company valuation adjusting upward in analyst projections, competitor stock prices fluctuating as markets absorbed. The implications, and a flood of emails from former colleagues who had questioned my vision now seeking opportunities to connect. James, my ex-boyfriend, who had deemed me insufficiently ambitious, sent a particularly transparent message congratulating me on finally realizing my potential, and suggesting we reconnect for mutual benefit given our complementary professional trajectories. I deleted it without response. Any lingering resentment long since transformed into gratitude for the redirection his departure had ultimately provided. The most meaningful response came from Eleanor, Jessica's mother, who had dismissed me so thoroughly at Michael's wedding. Her message was brief, but represented a complete recalibration. "Emma, I owe you an apology for my misjudgment. Your accomplishments are extraordinary, and I hope we might develop a more meaningful connection as family in the future." I responded with genuine openness, recognizing that growth and reassessment were possible on all sides of relationships. "Thank you, Eleanor. I would welcome that opportunity. Perhaps we could start with that lunch we discussed at the wedding, once things settle with Mosaic's new partnership." 6 months after the Meridian deal, our implementation was proceeding ahead of schedule, with their creative teams reporting productivity improvements that exceeded projections. Mosaic had doubled in size, moving to an expanded office space that occupied 2 full floors of our Seaport building. Rachel had built an engineering team renowned throughout Boston's tech community, while I focused on strategic direction and maintaining our company culture through rapid growth. On a crisp autumn Sunday, we gathered at my parents' home for a dual celebration, Michael and Jessica's baby shower combined with the official launch of the Wilson Legacy Foundation. The contrast with Michael's wedding could not have been more striking. Where that event had highlighted divisions and misunderstandings, this gathering represented integration and mutual appreciation across different life paths. Jessica, now visibly pregnant, had become an unexpected ally in bridging family perspectives. Her own entrepreneurial project, an educational platform for pediatric nursing, had evolved from casual conversation to formal business plan with guidance from both me and my father, creating new connections across previously separate spheres. As gifts were opened and foundation documents ceremonially signed, I found myself standing slightly apart, observing the scene with a sense of completion that transcended professional accomplishment. My mother noticed my momentary withdrawal and joined me by the window overlooking the backyard where we had played as children. "Penny for your thoughts," she offered, linking her arm through mine in a gesture that had become more frequent as our relationship evolved. "I was just thinking about journeys," I replied. "How rarely they follow the paths we initially expect, yet somehow lead where we need to go." She nodded, understanding the layers of that observation. "When you moved back home after that first startup didn't work out, I was so worried for you. I thought you were lost, retreating. I couldn't see that you were actually gathering strength for a greater leap forward." "I didn't see it clearly myself then," I admitted. "I just knew I had to build something authentic, something that reflected my values rather than external expectations." "And now you have," she observed, glancing toward the living room where Michael was showing our father ultrasound images, while Jessica consulted with Rachel about website functionality for her nursing education platform. Not just Mosaic, but these renewed connections. The family reintegrated on new terms. The insight resonated deeply. What I had built extended beyond company valuation or professional achievement to include reconstructed relationships based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical assumptions. The Rolls-Royce that had made such an impression at Michael's wedding now seemed almost trivial compared to these more meaningful indicators of success. Eleanor approached us, champagne flute in hand, her manner now genuinely warm rather than performatively gracious. "Jessica just showed me the mock-up for her platform. What remarkable talent runs in this family? Medicine, technology, education. I've been telling Howard we need to establish something similar to your foundation for the Taylor side of the family." The comment, delivered without competitive undertone but as genuine appreciation, highlighted how thoroughly relationships had transformed. "The foundations could potentially collaborate on certain initiatives," I suggested, creating even broader support networks for next-generation entrepreneurs. As the celebration continued, David arrived, bringing news that further validated our journey. Meridian's board had authorized exploration of full acquisition terms a year ahead of the originally negotiated timeline. Their implementation results, having exceeded all performance metrics. They're preparing an offer that will likely value Mosaic at approximately $60 million, he informed me quietly. "We should discuss strategic response options this week." The news represented yet another milestone, yet I found myself less focused on the valuation figure than on what it would enable: expanded resources for the foundation, new opportunities for our team members, and potential freedom to explore whatever next venture might capture my entrepreneurial imagination. That evening, as guests departed and family lingered for informal conversation, Michael found me in our father's study, where I had retreated briefly to respond to an urgent email from our implementation team. "Remember when I told you not everyone gets extraordinary?" he asked, leaning against the doorframe in a posture reminiscent of our father. "That some of us just need to accept limitations and make the best of what's realistic?" I recall that conversation vividly, I acknowledged, closing my laptop to give him my full attention. I was projecting my own fears, he admitted, worrying that my chosen path was too conventional, too prescribed. Watching you risk everything to build something original made me question whether I'd chosen safety over significance. The confession surprised me. I had always perceived Michael as completely confident in his life choices, his surgical career representing achievement in its most socially recognized form. Your work saves lives, Michael. That's the definition of significance. Different expressions of meaningful contribution, he agreed. I think that's what Dad was trying to tell us all along, in his roundabout way. That the Wilson Drive manifests differently across generations and individuals, but the through line is using whatever talents we have to create lasting value. As we rejoined the family gathering, I found myself reflecting on the journey from that moment at Michael's wedding, standing in humiliation as Eleanor dismissed me as the poor sister who never quite figured things out, to this integrated celebration of diverse accomplishments across our extended family. The Rolls-Royce had made its statement that day, creating an undeniable disruption in established perceptions. But the true transformation had come through the substance behind that symbol. The company built on authentic value, the relationships reconstructed on mutual respect, the legacy extended beyond individual achievement to enable future generations. 2 years after Michael's wedding, I stood on a different stage, delivering the commencement address at my alma mater's business school graduation. Looking out at the sea of faces, young entrepreneurs preparing to launch their own journeys, I shared the wisdom distilled from my experience. Success isn't measured by the car you drive or the validation you receive. It's built through persistence when others doubt your vision, through authentic creation aligned with your values, and ultimately through contributions that extend beyond your individual journey to enable others who will follow their own unique paths. As I concluded the address, my hand instinctively touched my grandmother's oak tree pendant, the visible symbol of invisible connections that had supported my journey even when I couldn't recognize them. From being labeled the poor sister to creating wealth that would support generations of future innovators, my path had never been direct, but it had always been mine, authentic, determined, and ultimately transformative in ways that transcended any external judgment or temporary perception. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.